Okay, today in Flutter we're going to look at processing JSON data from an HTTP or a web API for this. So we're going to go over kind of details of this. We're going to use a sample here of a cat fax API. And we're going to start with this simple list builder app. So I've downloaded this and brought this into Flutter for us. And it's a pretty simple app. It is just the basic app with a list builder in it. So the main part inside Scaffold is a list builder here, and then we have a list of some strings up here that we are displaying. So that's the length of the list. And then here we create these cards, which are made up of list tiles. We have an icon, and then each list item here, and then we just have the subtitle here. And if you tap on it, it just says you tapped at that position for that. There's a floating action bar that just calls increment here that just displays an icon here, and it calls this add item to list, which just adds a generic item to the list here. So that's all the app does. And so we're going to start modify it. And here's the final version, the cat fax working version is there. So what are we going to do? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to process HTTP requests. So we're going to need this HTTP GET command here. I'm actually going to jump down here, and then we'll work through these imports here. So let's do this part. And so we're going to create a new method in our app here. So I'm going to go back down after the build method here. And create a new method. And for now, it'll just be a void method. It'll eventually return the data we get, but we'll just do it as a void now. So get cat fax or something like that. Just a place to hold this code that we have. And then, so we're going to have to get a URL or create a URL for this. So we will create a URL, and then we will get that the response from that here. So, and we'll get the response for us. Now, this is where we start seeing stuff. So this response, we have to call HTTP GET. This isn't defined anywhere. So we're going to do this import to import the HTTP package into Dart. So up here, we're going to do an import of that. But that's not found either, and the reason is because it's a package that we don't have imported in our pubspec. So we've got to go into our pubspec.yaml and tell it that our package is dependent on that. So I have to find our pubspec YAML file, scroll down to the dependencies here, and I want to put it in here after like the Flutter one. Again, I have to make sure my spacing lines up. I want it under Flutter, not under SDK. So I want it under Flutter here for that. So that'll be there. Now it's still not highlighted because I have to do a pub get here. I'm surprised it's not telling me there that I have to do a pub get. We'll just do a pub get here. I guess maybe I hadn't saved it yet. So, and then that should erase. So now it finds the package, and then it also at the bottom here finds this for us. So now this response is returned. We're just going to declare this as a final variable. So I'm just going to say final here because we're just going to get it here and we're not going to change it after the fact. Here we're not going to recreate the response for this. So we'll just say final to declare that as a variable. We don't necessarily have to include a type for it because this is Dart here. So again, so we've done this, we've done the import, we've done this. We're eventually going to change this to get our actual URL, but that's okay. Now the data is returned in this response.body. So that's where the JSON file will actually be. So I can declare something like string JSON data equals, or JSON, let's say cat fax equals response dot body for this So I'm again going to just use response.body to get this string. Now, right now this isn't filled in, and we'll talk about that, how to fix that error. Um, so we can get that here. I'm going to skip over this stuff and get to this asynchronous stuff because that'll help get rid of this error. Now, we should be doing this asynchronously because this might take a little while. We don't want to hold up the rest of our app, and particularly the whole Android app. So we want to do this asynchronously. So we'll say await here. And what this will do is this will wait here, let the rest of the Flutter app, anything else in the Flutter app, and anything else in Android keep running for this. But run this and wait asynchronously and wait for the response. Now, if this is going to be asynchronous, then this has to be an asynchronous function. So it's going to say add asynchronous up here. So we'll say get cat fax and we'll add this async modifier here. And then rather than returning something here, a void, it's going to return a future void. I'd added that. So whatever we actually end up returning here, we'll put in here. It has to be encapsulated inside a future because of the async here, because it won't be an actual whatever we return until this is actually done and done processing here. So, and then why is it this? I thought the body. Let me look at that. Oh, I did that wrong, of course. We want to do the get asynchronously, not the declaration. So I want to do this as an await, not this one. What was I thinking? Okay. Okay, so yes, when we call HTTP GET, that's the thing that's going to be slow. So that's the thing we have to do an await on. And then we get the response. And the response now will have a body as far as that goes. And so that clears up that. As soon as we move this into an asynchronous await, that works fine. Okay, now, so we've done this. And again, it makes it into a future variable and stuff like that. So now we should be also checking the status code here. So when we do HTTP requests, we get different status codes replied back. The most common one, hopefully, is 2000 OK. You may be familiar with some other ones like the 404 error, which is file not found. When you go to a web page, it's not found for it. But there are other ones. So what we want to be checking if the status is OK here. So we can also look at that. So we want to do this kind of if status response.status code. So we only want to get the body if the status code worked returned correctly. So we want to do a check if the response.status code equals, and then we want to do a it should be just an integer, so we can just check if it's equal to 200, and then if so, then we can process our cat fax here for that. So. Now, if we don't get the status code right, we probably want to just return some sort of error here. We just want to maybe print out an error so at least we can see it in our stuff, and we can print out the status code here. So we can just do that print statement here, some sort of print statement. So we create our URL. We are then going to do our await our HTTP GET with that URL and await the response. Once we get the response, we check the response status code, see if it's 200, which is correct. If so, then we are going to grab the response's body, and that'll be our cat fax as a JSON file. Now, we want to convert that into an actual database object. So I'm going to skip over this part here for now, where we're going to try to load where we're going to call this method. I want to try to get this method set up a little bit more here. So we're going to want to create a JSON file out of this here. So we want to convert a JSON file or text string into an object for this. And we're going to use this quick IO to do that. And again, we're going to use this, we can use this placeholder code here, which is a nice simple JSON file. Oops, it should be opening that up in a new window. I'll have to change that. Okay. This has some standard placeholders. In fact, this is the one we want, is a new user. So let's just look at that. So if we have this is a whole set of users here. I'm going to take that whole file, copy it, and I'm going to go here and open up this quick IO site, which will take any JSON file and convert it to any language we want, and we're going to convert it to Dart. So I can delete this, put in a new JSON file here, and it will convert it into Dart for us, or any other language for that matter. So here's the Dart. And so again, it's taking this sample setup where we have different employees. Each employee has an ID, name, all this sort of stuff. And then it has an address field. Inside that is a geo field. Inside it has a company field. And so it's going to create a number of JSON classes for each of these subgroups here. So we have the main class, again, because we didn't give this a name up here, is called welcome. So actually, I'm going to change this. This is going to be a user. So I'm going to change this to user here. So again, class user, and these are all the fields in user. And some of these are just strings, but some of these are like address is an address class. So down here is an address class for that. And inside address is a geo class, and so there's another geo class. So it creates a number of classes, a company class here that we need for this. So it'll create all the JSON stuff for it, and it'll create two methods for us. One to get a user from JSON, so where we'll specify a JSON file, a string of JSON file, and it will then return a list of these users. Or if we have a list of users, it will encode it and create a JSON file from that. So those are the two things we can do. But again, we don't want necessarily do a user one, so we won't use that. We're going to go back here and we're going to do this Fax API. So let's open that up. So here's a sample of the Fax. I'm going to grab that. This grabs 5 Fax as an example. And again, I'm going to go in here to this quick type, delete all that, and enter in these new Fax stuff. And then call this Fax. And again, make sure our language is in Dart. Now, I'm going to get this. I want to create this and put this in its own file. So over here, we're going to want a new file for our Fax. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to right-click here and do a new Dart file called Fax. I'm going to use all lowercase again because we want it all lowercase. I'm going to add it to GitHub if it wants to. And now I'm going to go back here. Oops. I'm going to go here and I'm going to copy all this code here. Go back in here and paste it into here. So again, it's created this file here for us, Fax here. I'm going to note where it came from, just so I have that in stuff. So I'm just going to say file using. So specify the website we use to create that file, just for future reference here. And again, we have a class Fax that has information about a cat here. And again, this is actually most of the things. I don't think we have any we have a status. So one of the subtypes is a status. That's that's the only thing that is kind of unique. I think everything else is a string or a bool or a date time stuff. So the only other method here we have, a class we have, is a status class. Okay, so that's this. And again, we have this method get Fax from JSON. We've provided a string, and it will return a list of Fax for us. So that's what we're going to be using, is that method here. Okay, so we've defined that. Now we're going to go in the main thing. Okay, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to close this off here. Okay. So we've pasted the JSON file, got the name, changed the name, copied the source, set the language to Dart, and copied the, moved the information into our stuff here. And now we're going to use that information. So let's go back to our main.dart file. So here, if you remember, in our get catfaxed, we got a response, and then we got the body here. And so now we had the JSON file of all the cat facts. And so we're going to convert that into a list of cat facts. So again, here, we're going to call this method. I'm just going to copy that over here for now so we can kind of see it. So we're going to call cat facts from JSON file, and this is the string we're going to specify. Here, I guess I could also just say response body up here, but I'm going to use this here as our return type. Again, it's not finding this, and so why it's, well, first it wants, nope, that's not what I want. It's not finding this because we have to import that file. So up here, I want to also do an import catfax .dart and do my semicolon. Okay, so that'll import it now. It should find that here for us. Let's see, why isn't it? Oh, okay. So yeah, we're returning this type. Now I need to have a variable of that type actually here. So I need to say, I need a list of cat facts, and I'm going to say facts. I'm just going to say cat facts equals that call. Okay, so that's, we're going out, getting our cat facts, declaring a variable called cat facts, and we're doing it here. So we're going to want to return this to us. So rather than, when we call get cat facts, rather than returning void, we're going to return this list of cat facts. So I'm going to put that up here for this. So this is now our method we call get cat facts, and it returns a list of cat facts, actually a future list of cat facts, because this will be done asynchronously. Now, one thing we do have to watch here is that where are we going to do our return for this? So we could do it here, but we also want to do a return here. So we have to figure out how to do that. So let's do one return here. Return this our fact facts. Let's rename that. Let's do a refactor, rename, and change that to cat facts. That sounds better. Okay. Sorry about that. Cat facts, and return that. Now, what happens if we don't get a response? What do we return here? So we want to return a null pointer. So how do we do that? We can just say return, and then we can create a list of cat facts. And then we can just say create an empty list. Oops. Cat facts. And that'll create an empty list of cat facts for us. So if we get a full list, we return. Otherwise, we'll return an empty list of cat facts for us. So this should be our new method for return. So now we are processing all the HTML. Now we now have to make sure we update this to be the correct URL. So let's go back to our code here. And again, we're going to use this cat Fax API here. So we're going to do that. Grab that and put that in our code over here as our URL. And rather than just returning 5 cat facts, I wanted to be able to do some scrolling and stuff. So I think I'm going to just get 25 cat facts here. So we get 25 cat facts. This API actually has a you can specify how many facts you want just with this amount field. So, okay, so this is our main routine here. Now we're going to call that. So let's go back in here. So again, we're now processing this and creating a list of cat facts from this. One thing that's really nice is this, again, with this quick type IO, it's really easy to generate these. If you have a JSON thing, generate a Flutter object, and then even the methods for converting that to and from JSON for us. So now we're going to call this. Now, where are we going to call this? So you have a couple options here. When we did Firebase, we used our list builder here, and we surrounded it with a stream builder, and we did it that way and run that kind of asynchronously. So that's one way of doing it. We're going to do a slightly different way here. We're just going to call this explicitly, but we're going to do it up higher in our init state method for this. So we're going to add an init state stuff. I'm actually going to clean this up a little bit. Right now we have this add item method. I'm going to delete that, and we're not actually even going to use the floating action bar here. So I'm going to delete that that calls the add item stuff. So okay, so we don't need that up here, and instead we're going to do declare an init state method. So this is a void method called init state, and this is run when your app is started, and it's an override. So we have to specify it's in the parent class that this is an override method for this. And since it is an override, we're just going to call the parents init state method right away. So that'll initialize stuff. And now we're going to do our own initialization stuff for this. So now we're going to call our method down below. What was our method called? Get catfax. So we're going to call that when we initialize our app for this. So we're going to call that right away, get catfax, go get the catfax and initialize that. So that, and then we want to probably save our results in our variable here. So let's replace, instead of my list up here, let's replace this with a list of catfax. I'm not using this string either, I think. So again, I'm going to delete this string. I'm going to create this as a list of catfax. My catfax. Let's see. This would be a list of catfax like that, I think. Okay, and then we're going to maybe initialize this as a null list to start with for this. And then when we call get to catfax, we're going to store that in this variable. So now we have a variable here. And one reason we're adding it here is that that allows us to use it down below. So like here, we can be using that to display the length, and like we can get the position of it. And in fact, this is a catfax, so now we can go in there and we can maybe we want to maybe get the text of the catfax. So my catfax subposition dot text to get the text of that catfax. Because inside each catfax, there's actually a text option. So if I look at where's my catfax here? Look at my catfax. There's a status here. There's the user that submitted it. There's an ID. There's the text, and the text is actually the fact that we want to display there. Okay. So now I've created this list up here, and I've changed my tile to display that list information for this. Okay, so that's there, but again, I'm still getting an error here, and because this is of type future here, and so we can't assign a future to here. And so how do I want to process this? So I actually want to be careful here. I want to call this kind of asynchronously here, and then only do something when it returns. So again, this will be done asynchronously. That's what this future is. It'll actually wait and hold for a while. I don't want my whole app to necessarily wait for that. So I'm going to try to call this asynchronously for this. So when I call, I'm going to switch this around a little bit. So when I'm working with asynchronous stuff, let's jump back into this. When I'm working with asynchronous things, I can also use a then command with this. So with the then, I can it will run and execute without waiting. Without waiting for it for this. I'll put in a new link. I forgot I updated this, but it seems like that is missing, so I'll have to update that again. So what I call is I say call my cat fax. Oh, wait, I'm calling my method get cat fax, which is an asynchronous method, and I say dot then here, and what this will do is keep going here asynchronously, but inside the then I can say what I want to do when this get cat fax returns. So when the get cat fax returns, when the future is done and gives me the actual value I'll want. So it's going to return a future list of cat fax. And then when it's done, then we'll actually execute. So it will return a list of cat fax. So I'm going to have one variable here, my new cat fax is my variable. And then I'm going to say this is the code processing that new cat fax. So I'm going to set my cat fax equal to this new cat fax here. Oops. Equal to this new cat fax for that. And I'm getting an error here, and the problem is that the then should have the parameter and this method in it. So I've got my bracket wrong there. That should be down here. Let me break this up maybe into two separate lines here like this. And let's do like this. Okay. That's what I want. Okay, so I'm going to call getCatFax, which is this asynchronous method I declared down here. But I don't want to wait for it, and it's going to eventually return a future, but I don't. I want to keep going and set up my app. I don't want my app to be frozen, not display anything. So I'm going to call getCatFax and then call then, and that'll let the rest of this keep going here and setting up the state. But when the catfax returns, the future changes into an actual value, it will return, and I'll do this code in here. So this code is run when the future is reached and I have catfax. So once I have catfax, it's going to give them to me here, and then I'm going to store them in my local variable for this. So that's my kind of my idea here. So let's see if this is going to run on my app. So let's get my app working here. Okay, so let's try to run this on my app. And I'll probably get an error. I'll try to get this up so we can see the error pop up. But we'll see often what happens is that I'll keep going and try to load my app, and it'll try to do this list. But my catfax won't be there, at least be an empty list. So we'll see how this processes, because we may have to add some code so this handles this more clearly, or at least displays some sort of loading button as this goes for this. So let's see. Okay, I have a build error here. Let's look at this. Okay, I had two problems when I compiled it. First, it gave me an error with the minimum SDK stuff. So to work with the Android SDK, we have to go into the Android project, that's in the app folder, and look at that build.gradle file, go there. And I had this as 30. It wanted it to be 31 with this new stuff with Dart and stuff. So I'm updating that to 31 here to get to work, at least on my machine. And then when I compile it now, it gives me this weird error. Target S version 31 above requires explicit value for this value here. And again, that's a hard one. I've run into that error before when doing this, and if you Google this, I just pasted that in here. Go to that first Stack Overflow. Again, they're talking about it's a new thing with Android 12, and my phone that I'm running this on is Android 12, so you might not run into either of these errors on your device here, but we need this export equals true in our Android manifest for each activity here, so I have to go here. Now, it's sometimes hard to find the Android activity, so if I go into Android, there's not an Android manifest here. I have to go to app, source, main, and that's the one I want here. So inside, I only have one activity, the main activity. So right after that, I'm going to paste in this export equals true. It's a weird error, but now if I run this, hopefully it'll run correctly. So now it's run here, so I'm going to close these files. But my app isn't doing too much. It's not displaying anything for this here. So I might want to do some printouts here to see. Now what I eventually will find out is that inside here, I'm not doing a set state. So I'm updating some data here without being in a set or update state or set state. Yeah. And if you remember, whenever we're in Flutter and we're updating the screen, data that should be on the screen, we need to call set state. But let's say we didn't know that right away. And so I want to just see how this works. So I might be doing some printouts here just to display some things down here. So for example, maybe here I would want to print out that I'm getting a response back. So I might say print and do something HTTP response returned with status of, and then maybe I'll print out this response, maybe just plus, and then response dot status code. And that's going to be an int, so I want to convert that to a string there. And so maybe I want to print that out here. Now here we're processing the JSON file for this. Maybe I want to actually print out the JSON file here, so I can just say, print get cat fax, and then JSON cat fax is equal to, and then print out that. So I want to actually put this in quotes here, and then add into my cat fax here. So maybe I want to print out my JSON fax for this, or once I convert this to a list, maybe I want to say, number fax returned is equal to, and then I can get my cat fax, that's my list dot length, and just print out that, and then do that as a toString. So again, you can do some different printouts here to see if this is going to be running okay for this. You might be able to do a hot reload and get that to run. Here we'll see if it run these, but again, this is in our init, so I didn't think that would actually work, so I'm going to have to actually run this again, unfortunately, and then see what this prints out here. And so the question is, when do we see this run? We should also put out some printouts here. We could put in a printout here saying we're in init state and that when we're done with init state for this stuff. So yeah, I'm still not seeing this. Well, yeah, so now I'm seeing this run. And actually I'm seeing my cat fax for that. So I actually was able to display that cat fax. So you may be asking, so why did putting in some print statements actually do this? It may have slowed things down enough so that it would work, or maybe I just waited enough. So here, no. I guess what I did before, I just didn't. It refreshed the screen and showed it before with the new cat fax in it. So now I'm back here with a blank screen, but it has said HTTP response returned with the status at 200. So I'm getting the response right. Cat fax here, it's printing out all my cat fax here, number of fax returned 25. So I know I'm getting my cat fax here. So again, I can also put in some prints here to say like print in init state 1 to say I'm there. And maybe I want to see when I'm done. So after this, I'm going to say in init state 2, or maybe at. So try to run it here and see how this would work and when this. And I want to maybe put in another print when I update these cat facts in init state 3. And maybe I'll just say the new cat facts are here. So again, now one thing with asynchronous stuff is that it's often hard. The debugger often doesn't, or the error message, and sometimes it's sometimes hard to follow these with the printouts and stuff. I mean, with like breakpoints and stuff sometimes. So sometimes I just like to put in some of this stuff. One of the things I often find is if when I put in breakpoints, that pauses activity and lets the asynchronous stuff done, and that often skips some of the errors. So now if I run it this way, if I just do the printouts, I can kind of see what order everything's in for this. So now it's loading it up. It says so it said in init state 1 and then 2. So it actually did this and this before it did any of this stuff. And then it got the cat fax, displayed the cat fax, that I got 25 cat fax, and then returned and said the new cat fax are here. And again, so it got the new cat fax, but again, it didn't update this display. I'm still at this blank screen here. So again, back to my original thing is like, why isn't it updating the screen? And then hopefully now you're thinking, oh, in order to do a screen update, I have to do a set state. So maybe I can say surround this with a set state variable. So I'm going to do that, surround that with a set state, run this again, clean off my app. And let this run again. And then now it should, once the new cat facts are here, it should update it. So I'll see my screen start off blank, and then I'll see it display the cat facts for this. Okay, it's installing the app now. Here it goes. So it's all blank, no cat facts here. It's got that stuff, and then now my cat faxes are here. So it does when the cat fax arrives here, it's here. So initially the page is blank for a while. So let's try to look at that again. So basically this is working, but again we start with that initial blank page. So again, right away the app is all blank. So how do we want to handle that? We're going to do one more thing here to handle that blank app, and we're going to say add a Boolean variable to this that says this is loading for this. So I'm just going to add a Boolean variable, loading equals true. Initially it will be loading. And then once we're in here and we're done loading, we got our new cat fax, we're going to say loading equals false. False. Now, once we have that variable, we can use that in our method here. So, for example, when we're displaying our title of our app here, or our cards, we could do things. So, rather for like the title, we can be checking if it is loading or not for that. So I'm going to change this. This is going to be a local variable. I'm going to change this to underscore loading. I should probably change this to underscore cats too. I'm just going to do that real quick. Refact name and change that to underscore cats. That'll make sure that these are local variables here. Okay, so and then do underscore loading here. Okay, so down here, when I want to display the title of my widget, for example, in my app bar, I can do something like check if loading here. If loading, then, and I can use this shortcut if then. I can say a variable here, and then if it's true or false, and I can say if it's true, I'm going to say that my title is going to be loading data. Otherwise, if it's false, I'm done loading, I'm going to say cat fax. So I can do something like that in my widgets. Also, even here for like the card, returning the card or whatever, I could, instead of returning a list even, I could be checking if loading and then return just a text here rather than this whole cat fax. Now this isn't so bad because the list viewer, it will actually manage if this list is of 0 length, because it won't update this at all for this. Okay, so now we're going to run this again. Okay, and I should watch this here. It should say that it's loading first, here loading data, and then it says cat fax for this stuff. Since the best interface has kind of weird things, anyone can submit cat fax, so hopefully you won't see anything too obnoxious as the cat fax for this. But that's our job now. Now I could probably go now to have it work and get rid of a bunch of these print statements, or at least just comment them out here. So I can be going through here and commenting out. Now one of the nice things about like other developments and like a log thing is logs will comment themselves out or won't run into production environments. We're still building in a debugging environment, so it's not showing up here. But for these, since they're just print statements, I'm going to just comment them out for this. I'm going to do one more thing, I guess, and that is maybe display a cat picture. So maybe I can go out and find a really nice cat picture for that on the internet. And then in my tile here, because the tiles don't look, they just have this little picture here. So for the leading icon, I'm going to change that. And rather than doing that generic icon, I'm just going to do here, the leading, I'm just going to do an image network and then paste an image of a cat for that. So now let's see if that'll work. Oh, and I need that inside a string here to here. Okay, let's see if I can refresh that. There, now I have a cat photo with all my cat facts, and I can scroll through my cat facts and see them all. Okay, so that's the basics of how we can get some data from a JSON file.